I've recently gotten back into Space Engineers, and I'm seeing a lot of newer players are having a rough time with some of the PvP aspects of Space Engineers. I currently play on the Skunkworks server, but the tips and advice I give in this video will help players across many of the different PvP servers of Space Engineers. What I'll talk about in this video will be good for players who enjoy 1v1s and or team fights. The number one biggest and easiest to fix mistake for newer players is the placement of their weapons. A good placement of weapons will ensure that you can continue to dish out high amounts of damage for as long as possible. As I do want to keep this video short, I'll get right into the video. The biggest offender with weapons placement that I have seen so far is players keeping their damage types grouped together way too much. It is vital that your kinetic and energy weapons are separated whenever possible in order to ensure that a single bad hit doesn't rob you of one of your damage types early on in the fight. If this happens, and let's say you lose all of your energy damage early on in the fight, there's a good chance that fight is completely impossible to win from that point. This is because a good enemy player will simply modulate their shields to counter the damage type that you have left on your warship. This is why even during the fights, I ensure that I use my camera and get an assessment of what weapons the enemy has left operational. From there, I can modulate and hard counter my enemy and tilt the fight even more so in my favor. The second key element in weapons placement is what I call the order of sacrifice. This refers to placing your weapons in a manner where as your ship takes damage and weapon systems start to fail, you keep the vital weapons online while letting weapons which will fill more of a niche role fail first. Typically, these will be weapons which only are good against shields and not armor or weapons. For example, I have my Punishers and Shocks in the front, letting them get destroyed first. This is because those two weapons are only really meant for shield damage and are only going to be critical while the enemy has fresh shields. While I have the Reaper Cannons, Cyclones, and Vulcans in the rear, so that as my fight with my enemy becomes an unshielded fight, I'll still have all the tools needed to win that fight. If the Punishers and Shocks go down, I still have a decent amount of energy and kinetic shield damage on the table from the Reaper Cannons and the Vulcans. They can also serve as anti-component weapons for when the enemy shields are down. Notice the staggered nature of the weapons in the rear. I have the Cyclones forward, then the Vulcans, then the Reaper Cannons, as this is the order of which I'd prefer the weapons to become offline. This is because the Reaper must be guarded, as yes, it is only an energy-based weapon, but some of its damage goes through shields completely, possibly shutting down the enemy's vitals, including shield components. The order of sacrifice doesn't only refer to the front of the ship though, as this goes with any edges of your warship, which will most likely be hit first, hence why the Cyclones are placed where they are, leaving the Vulcans and Reapers intact at the very least, as I need those to successfully fight. Line of sight is another critical consideration in weapons placement. Having a proper line of sight matters not as much at longer ranges, but you need to be prepared for if the enemy jumps to your location and then jump inhibitors you, as you'll possibly be stuck at that close range for some time. Not having a good line of sight with your weapons will severely lower your damage output, as not only will your weapons not fire, they will also not track at all, and either reset to their default position, or your weapons will seek another target completely, which may not be your focus. In order to mitigate this, I prefer to have my ships have a large winged aspect to them in the rear of the ship, and have the weapons placed on those wings. This overall lets my ship spit out more damage in close range compared to other ship layouts. Understand though that this can come at the sacrifice of the integrity of your ship, in the form of being easier to hit from certain angles, as well as reduce shield HP slightly in some cases. If you are worried about that, then I would recommend a more linear ship layout. You'll typically see players go for a happy medium, where they have a nose on their ship that soaks all the damage they need, while they have their weapons in the rear of their ship on a wing of some kind. Keep in mind that not all turrets have the same degrees of movement, so you must ensure that your turrets can properly aim with where they're placed. Another thing to be aware of is the difference in muzzle velocity sometimes even just between ammo types. For example, the Reaper cannons on my ship typically can fire fine, but when I switch to the Bunker Buster ammo, I have to compensate for that much lower muzzle velocity by flying my ship side to side in order for my shots not to hit my own ship and reach the target. This video has already gone long enough, so I'm going to end it here. Hopefully some newer players see this and are now better prepared for their PvP fights. Space Engineers PvP has a brutal and steep learning curve, so I intend to help players ease into it in order for them to enjoy the game to its full potential. And I want to see the PvP community grow. I'll most likely be making additional videos covering more topics, as there is a lot to go over within Space Engineers PvP. Feel free to give any feedback, as I'm trying this video format for the first time, but I believe videos like this are needed. Thank you.